Allah has power over all things. So you will find this phrase repeated very often. You read in the Quran and very often you'll come across it. Life to the dead? Of course, he can. And following from that furthermore, I mean, he created these things, he can recreate and bring back the dead to life. But in addition to that, he has surely power over all things. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power over all things. So it is not just that, it's not restricted to that bringing the dead to life. But whatever it is that he wishes to do, he can do it without any restrictions. Also, Allah resurrected him. And this story shows that Allah has the power to do all things. This is the conclusion that that man came to. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أن يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها فأماته الله 100 عام ثم بعثه قال كم لبثت قال لبثت يوما أو بعض يوم قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها ثم نكسوها لحما فلما تبين له قال أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. The translation, or the like of him, that person, that man who many say is Uzair, who passed by a tongue and it had fallen down upon its roofs. He said, when will Allah give it life after its death? So Allah caused him to die for 100 years, then raised him to life. He said, how long have you tarried? He said, that is, the man said, I have tarried a day or a part of a day. That is how long I was maybe asleep, a day or a part of a day. Said he, nay, you have tarried 100 years. Then look at your food and drink. Years have not passed over it. And look at your ass, and that we may make you a sign to men. In other words, the ass or donkey that was rotten out is not only dead, but rotten also, all the flesh and bones. That we may make you a sign to men, and look at the bones, how we set them together. Then we clothed them with flesh. So when it became clear to him, he said, I know that Allah has power over all things. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. He caused the man to die and remain for 100 years and then raise him back to life. And then in front of the man's eyes, he was able to see the donkey, his own donkey, come back to life. It was rotten, and he knew from that, it was because it was rotten. He knew from that he actually was gone, not conscious at least, for a very, very long time, so that this donkey, all of the flesh and so on, could become rotten out, although his food was intact and fresh as ever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him the sign and recounts it to us so that we may come to the same conclusion, and that is Allah has power over all things. So when you when you come across people who need to be convinced about this, there are many, I didn't go into it, but there are many things in nature that we can look at. Who created all of this? Who created the heavens and the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars and so on, and all of these plants that sprout out from the ground, etc., etc. You show them all of the things in nature. Who created this? If somebody believes in God, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in God, they will say God. They will say that. This question was asked. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recounts it for us in the Quran, that the mushrikeen, the idolaters who worship many gods, who had many idols in the Kaaba and so on, and they were worshiping them and calling upon them for help and for protection and all of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will say Allah. They will not attribute creation, the creation of this world, this universe, to their idols, because they knew they made these idols from their own hands. These idols were made. The idols cannot be the maker, cannot be the creator. They knew that. They would not say that. At least they were sensible enough to have that understanding, although they were still not sensible enough that you were worshiping these idols. Why don't you worship the one who created everything instead of these things that are themselves created? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts this forward, the question, who created the heavens and the earth? And they will say, Allah. It is Allah who created. So this is for people who do believe in God, even if they believe in more than one God. Ask them the question, who created all of these things? Obviously, these demigods and semi-gods and so on, the minor gods, could not have done any of this creation. Only one God could have done all of this creation, and that is the only God that really is there. And He's the one that you should worship and so on. And also we derive from these facts, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-powerful. He can do whatever he wants to do. And the people who ask, absurd questions, one of the questions, and I'll conclude with this, one of the questions we hear the atheists and so on will ask, and just to create confusion, they will say, can God, if you believe in God, and you believe that He is all-powerful, then can God create something more powerful than Himself? Can God create, for example, a rock that He cannot lift or something like that, right? All sorts of absurd questions like that. And this question has, is not worthy of answering directly. But you tell them to, think of it. If God is all powerful, then nothing can be more powerful than Him. Nothing can be more powerful than Him. He is all powerful. Yes, He can do it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not guilty of silliness. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala think of creating something that is better than, far more powerful than Him? It cannot be. It is an impossibility for anything else to exist that is more powerful than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your question, this kind of question is absurd, it is ridiculous, it is not a question that is worthy of looking at seriously or answering and so on, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful. He will not create something like Himself, and that is an impossibility, in fact, for that to happen, for another being to be created that is as powerful as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will remain a creation. If He created something, it will remain His creation. It will remain His creation and under His power. There are some questions like that maybe you dismiss or you try to reason it out with them. You are thinking illogically. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a deeper understanding of Tawheed, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to boldly proclaim Tawheed in front of anyone. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Just in case there are any questions, if any one of you want to ask a question on this topic.
The last slide was on Prophet Uzair.
The previous slide, this ayah. The ayah is here in Arabic, and then the translation of it.
So Allah caused him to die after 100 years, and then
yes.
He was what alive.
Mm-hmm. Well, the name is not mentioned. أو كالذي مر على قرية, or the like of that person who passed by a town. The name Uzair is not mentioned, but many of the Mufassirin say it refers to Uzair, and others say no, it doesn't. Right? Who is the person we don't know. Allahu A'lam. So it may be Uzair. And then the question of Uzair himself, who was Uzair? Was he a prophet? Exactly who he was. That's also a topic of discussion among scholars, exactly who he was. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم